All right, hey, Shalom. I want to begin by giving all glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Hakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of the great mill. So, Shalom to the hopefully elect, and Shalom to all the Akim, pushing his truth with sincerity. It's Brother Atazwan from the GMS Columbus, Ohio branch, coming back again with another video through the Spirit, Lord's will is edifying. And just doing some reading through the Spirit, and doing some reading in Acts the 13th chapter. Beautiful chapter, beautiful book, doing some rereading. And one thing I will encourage brothers through the Spirit, it's like his second job, is to make sure you finish your whole roll, okay? Finish your whole roll, man, all right? Because, once you finish your roll and you start to reread, you gain more understanding in the Spirit, all right? And you're unlocked to more precepts. You add more to your arsenal, okay? But just a quick exhortation to brothers who still finishing their row, still finish on completing. It's a beautiful sight, and ultimately, it leads to more understanding in the scriptures. All right, now I was just doing some reading in Acts the 13th chapter, and pretty much this is after the events concerning Paul through the Spirit, condemning the man Elymas, all right, or Bar Jesus, a sorcerer, a false prophet who was on the island of Cyprus. Okay, and this is, just concerning, the events that followed it. And Lord's will, I'll get some time to complete this. It's going to be short. I'm in the midst of the plantation, but I just wanted to point something out in Acts 13, starting at 13. And we're just going to go into it real quick. It says, Paul and his companions then left Paphos by ship for Pamphylia, landing at the port town of Perga. There John Mark left them and returned to Jerusalem. But Paul and Barnabas traveled inland to Antioch of Pisidia. On the Sabbath, they went to the synagogue for the services. After the usual readings from the books of Moses and the prophets, those in charge of the service sent them this message. Slakia. It says, brothers, if you have any word of encouragement for the people, come and give it. So Paul stood, lifted his hand to quiet them, and started speaking. And this is the point I was just harping on, concerning this statement, that ultimately proves, the gentiles, that were sought after were ultimately Israelites. And, through the Spirit, Paul's gonna, briefly tap into it. But hold on, I want to see something real quick. This is all fire too, and this taps into it as well. But let's continue on verses. And you got to pay attention to these key details when reading, understanding what you're reading, because a Christian will read this and just really read over it and not really sit and harp on the statement, in its totality. But it reads 16, it says, so Paul stood, lifted his hand to quiet them, and started speaking. Men of Israel, he said, and you God-fearing Gentiles, listen to me. Right, Salaki. Checking out the scenery. But right, because at this time, all right, you had Gentiles who were being converted, to come back to the ways of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. Real quick in this KJV, it says, then Paul stood up and beckoned with his hand, said, men of Israel, and ye that hear the Most High, or it's like fear the Most High, give audience. You see? So you had, the natural Jews, all right, at this time. All right, but you also had the Gentiles because what? Where were they at? All right. They were in Antioch. You see? Real quick. Let's look up the map for Antioch and going to show you, because when you read up, even concerning this false prophet, Elymas, all right, or Bar Jesus, he was a Jew, but he was where in Cyprus, on the island of Cyprus, man. You see? So you had Jake who were scattered in all these lands. Slock, yeah. But let's look up Antioch real quick, just so you get an understanding of where this is at, okay? And how, like I said again, you had Gentiles, all right, Israelite foreigners who were in all these lands and were scattered amidst, via the, the various captivities, but predominantly the southern tribes, all right, being scattered by the Greeks, okay? Because when you tap into that history, going into Daniel 8, concerning how Antiochus, all right, saw his eye, he saw his eye to the pleasant land. You see, you had men who were scattered and then taken captive and brought to various lands, etc. But Antioch, it says, a city in southern Turkey, which is what pretty much Asia Minor today, or so, then near the Syrian border, population 86,200, established 2007. Antioch was an ancient capital of Syria under the Seleucid kings who founded it in 300 BC. Turkish name Antakya, a city in ancient Phrygia, Slovakia, a city in north central California. Well, that's not it. But just so real quick, let me just look it up. Let me go to the map. Ancient Greek city, so Jake understand what they're reading and where this is at. All right. Let me see. Let me get a better map. All right, boom. So you get an idea of where these ancient cities were, and pretty much the route, and the landscape of what was going on in these times. Okay. So here you got Antioch. All right. And when you go, Slovakia. Anyways, that's cool. So you understand where Paul was residing, him and who Barnabas at this time. All right. And you see the route, because in Acts 13, they traveled there to Cyprus. All right. See? So you understand all these land masses, etc., and the route they took, And like I said, how you had Jake who were scattered in these lands. Because, like I said, they were in Antioch. And it was a church established in there. All right, in that city. Okay? I'm going to start at 14 again. It says, but Paul and Barnabas traveled inland to Antioch of Pisidia. On the Sabbath, they went to the synagogue for the services. After the usual readings from the books of Moses and the prophets, those in charge of the service sent them this message. Brothers, if you have any word of encouragement for the people, come and give it. So Paul stood, lifted his hand to quiet them, and I'm in the NLT, and started speaking. Men of Israel, he said, and you God-fearing Gentiles, listen to me. The God of this nation of Israel chose our ancestors and made them multiply and grow strong during their stay in Egypt, right? So putting everything in perspective, all right? Putting everything in perspective, all right? Paul referenced, accompanied with the natural Jews and the Gentiles at this time, as them having the same fathers or ancestors, you see? So that's what I'm harping on, how Paul bundled them together, all right? In the sense that they understood that these ultimately are Israelites as well. Because like I said, again, we were scattered. Let's just get a quick one. Matter of fact, let's go to Ezekiel, the 36th chapter. I like that one. And where we at? Ezekiel 36. This Ezekiel 36:24 says, "For I will take you from among the heathen," KJV, "and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land." That's a good one, but I think it's what part I'm harping on. Let me see. Or should I start up? Which that's a good one, real quick. It's going again, showing you how we were scattered. NLT says, "For I will gather you up from all the nations and bring you home again to your land," right? So we were scattered amongst all these nations, the various lands, etc., concerning our captivities. All right. And this just goes into how the Lord will cleanse us, all right, and bring us back to our land, etc. But let's just get another quick one. Let's go to the KJV, or New Testament. Let's go to James 1. James 1 at the top. This is James 1 KJV. "James, a servant of the Most High and of the Lord Yahushua HaMashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting." You see? So we were scattered amongst all these lands. And like I said, so I'll pull up the map to show you had, Israelites, who were being called Gentiles at this point, Israelite foreigners, all right, who were scattered in all these lands. You got to remember, again, the churches in Asia Minor, all right, the 7 churches. When you read Revelation, the 2nd chapter and the 3rd chapter, okay? But anyway, let's jump back to Acts 13. And we probably close it up in a second. Like I said, I'm still on the plantation, so I'll make a quick video while,